C-shaped canals. So before I go into the presentation, I would like to uh, inform that all the cases in this presentation have been done with a operating microscope. And to handle an anatomy as complicated as a C-shaped anatomy, I would strongly recommend anybody to use one just to make sure the whole procedure is quite predictable as well. So to begin with, what is a C-shaped canal? So to put it in very simple terms, you do have a root canal space with probably one or more entries, one or more exits, and a lot of connections in between. That's what it is. Be very simple. It's just many entries, probably one or more exits, and then a lot of interconnections in the form of pins, webs, or accessory canals. That's pretty much what a C-shaped canal is.
Dr.
So,
Ru
yes,
excuse
madam.
Dr. Ruben, your voice is like should come a little closer to the mic, please. It's not
Yeah,
very
I'm just moving close. Is this better?
a bit more,
One second, just a second.
or you could speak a little louder because on the Facebook it will become even less audible.
Okay. Is this better now?
Yeah, it is better. Thank you.
So we have a lot of classifications on what a C-shaped canal is, but then we're not going to go into details on this in this presentation. I plan to keep this entirely clinical. So, but as far as managing a C-shaped canal is concerned, this is one very important data we all have to know. So if you, again, to make this simple, if you want me to put it all in a nutshell, if you're practicing endodontics in India, the chances that you will run into a C-shaped canal is very less than 10%. That's probably the information that is conveyed in the whole graph. So from a clinician's point of view, this is as much as you probably need to know as well. So, and again, as far as endodontics is concerned, this is one slide that I always share in all my presentations. There is no real one way of going about anything at all. There are multiple ways. There may be better ways than what I have described here as well. So the thing about endodontics is there is no one way to go about it. And what I would be discussing in this presentation is purely from my clinical experience and what I do in day-to-day practice. So to begin with, these are the things we're going to discuss. Basically going to discuss how I would handle a C-shaped anatomy from start to stop. So unless and otherwise you have a CT scan ahead of the procedure, you will only uh, be able to identify a C-shaped canal as a surprise. It's not going to be something that is readily visible on the radiograph unless you have a CT scan. So the only clue you might have is it can either be a bulky root or a fused root, and predominantly on a maxillary, a mandibular second molar. So the mandibular second molar is where you will find these C-shaped canals almost always. So that is as much as you need to know at this point. So basically, there's going to be one good preoperative assessment with a radiograph. And if you can manage a CT scan at this stage, nothing like it. It's really fantastic. But then what most of us have is a radiograph, and what we need to look for is a fused root or a bulky root in a second molar area, which predominantly will end up being a C-shaped canal. And as a clinician, one thing we need to be prepared for at this point is, I'm sure we all have observed that a lot of these mandibular second molars, they have a slight mandibular mesial tilt. That's probably because of a missing six and the patient not taking the trouble of replacing it, or it can even be just the occlusion. So these mandibular second molars have a tendency to be tilted slightly mesially. So when you do an axis on these cases, you should be careful to orient the burr accordingly, or you're going to end up with an iatrogenic error. So that's one other observation I would make at the initial stage. Am I dealing with an upright tooth or is it tilted? And again, accessing the second molar, most of our patients, again, don't give us the ideal 3 or 4 finger opening. So that's one thing I would also want to be careful about at this stage. And as far as the access prep, I would probably want you to widen it as much as you would require to conveniently locate all these orifices and not miss anything at all. So, like we know, there are many ways or many configurations these C-shaped canals are going to be at. So, you don't want to miss anything. So that's pretty much what I would take care of at the initial stage of any access. The idea behind, if you actually look at a C-shaped canal, what you would observe is there'll be chunks of tissue on the inside. I'm sure we've all seen there is so much of tissue inside a C-shaped canal. We're not going to particularly discuss how do you negotiate these canals and go all the way down. One second. So we're not particularly going to discuss on how do we negotiate these canals all the way to the length because uh, it is never going to be a challenge. There's so much of space inside a C-shaped root that getting to the apex of these canals is going to be fairly straightforward. But what we need to discuss is how do we prepare these canals well enough to make sure we have we meet all our therapeutic goals. So what I would always tell myself when I treat a C-shaped canal is it's not about how much you clean, it's about how less you miss. Because there is a maze of tissue and interconnections in there, it might be beyond the scope of any operator for that matter, whether you have a CT scan, whether you have a microscope or anything at all to completely clean the place. So I would focus more on missing as less as possible rather than cleaning as much as possible. The reason being this. So if you look at this access prep, you have two very prominent orifices or openings. So this is the same tooth in a closer view. So I can very comfortably send a rotary file from top to bottom, in this case, on both those openings. But then what you have to notice is the tooth structure in the center is a very fine thread. It's barely anything at all. It's probably just 1/4 the thickness of those two openings on top. So if I'm going to prepare those thin areas with the same rotary files, hoping that I will make contact with the root canal space three-dimensionally, definitely I am incorrect. I'm going to leave a lot of unclean spaces, and at the same time, I'm going to thin off a lot of dentine in a very vital area. So the trick to treating these C-shaped canals is not greater tapers to get all the tissue out. What I would prefer doing in these cases, some rotary file of a very minimal taper going to the full length and then circumferentially hand filing all these root canal surfaces with a hand file. So that's what I would do. So the idea behind treating these C-shaped canals with a rotary instrumentation, the solution is never greater taper files. Again, I'll come to why it's a terrible idea. So, and I would use very, very good irrigation with hypochlorite towards the lens of the procedure. So that's the finished post-op. This is the same case finished. And one little observation I made on this case, I normally recall and follow up all my cases really, really well. So one little observation I made in this case quite recently was, if you can see, the periodontal ligaments are widening. The periodontal ligament space is widening. So if you look at the parallel image of the patient's occlusion, you can see there are a lot of wear facets. So the periodontal load on this tooth is quite high. So if we look only at cleaning, shaping, and filling these orifices, it's just blocking out holes. But then what we have to remember is endodontics is an adjunct. I would probably say has to be planned a little more holistically. Let's say we need to look at occlusion as well. So when you're treating a tooth which has a C-shaped canal, you must remember it does not have those flared tripod roots like a regular tooth. So it will definitely lack the periodontal stability. So every time I treat a C-shaped canal, I would also take into account whether this tooth is going to be structurally stable, viable for a patient in the long run. So occlusion is one thing which you should additionally keep in track or keep in mind when you treat these C-shaped canals. If we have to plan something a little more comprehensively. Let's just say this case was referred to me by somebody else and I treat it, and this tooth fails for a periodontal reason. The practitioner is going to send him back to me at the end of 2 years saying your root canal failed, but then the endo has done just fine there. The failure has purely been on the periodontal side. So even being endodontist, I would want or I would encourage everybody to look at this aspect of treating a C-shaped canal as well, because a lot of the failures happen at this level. So this was another C-shaped canal which was treated somewhere, which came to my clinic. They had come for a rework, but I had to decline treatment. If you can carefully look at this image, you can see the gutta percha is virtually visible through the root surface. And if you can very clearly see the fin of dentine connecting these two roots. So it's very clear from here that the solution is not enlarging it too much. If you carefully look, there's a little strip perforation in this area. That's because of the aggressive enlargement by the previous practitioner. So the goal is not to enlarge wide to treat these mazes that are present inside the C-shaped canal. You have to be a little more concise and careful, and also keep in mind as to what's going to happen to this tooth 5 years or 10 years or 15 years down. Will it be strong enough to take care of the occlusal load? And especially when you're missing a six, the whole upper maxilla is going to entirely rest on the maxillary, the mandibular second molar. So that's one very important factor. And again, if you can appreciate, it is not evenly thin in all the spaces. Different areas of different C-shaped canals are thin in different areas. So we need to keep that in mind and not just use one instrumentation or one technique to treat this whole surface. I would prefer smaller tapers and carefully hand shaping, and then rely a lot on my irrigation protocol. So this is again a closer view of the same tooth surface. So this was another case I treated some time back. So can I go on? Is there a problem? Okay, so anyway, this was another case that I treated quite some time. So this was a case I came across a few years back, and it was a C, and it was all well treated, shaped, and the master cone looked quite satisfactory here. So what I did next was I obturated, and I always give a core, and I would always advise giving the core in the same appointment you obturate. I would not have an interim material and call them back to the core almost always. But once I had done my core, in this case, I realized I've missed one little canal there. So at this point, I had to make the decision as to whether I go back inside and locate this canal, or would it be a little too much of aggressive procedure at this point. So I took a call that I would just leave it just the way it is and observe what happens. So I got a 5-year recall on this case after post-endo. The tooth in the periapical area is absolutely clean. There's no real trouble at all. But then there's been extreme negligence from the patient's side, and we have a lot of secondary caries under the crown, and it's probably bound to fail eventually sooner or later. So what I'm trying to imply is teeth, they all fail for more than just a pulpal cause. Missing tissue or leaving a little this and that here and there may not kill the tooth entirely. And even if we have a failure at this stage, there is always a later stage where you can go back inside the tooth and work on it. But then any loss that is structural or periodontal is irreparable. It's what I'm trying to imply here. So we don't have to go full blast in terms of a cleaning. We have to focus or give attention to preserving tooth structure as well when we treat these kinds of delicate anatomy. So talking about that, I don't hope I've misled students into missing canals or anything of that sort. So in follow up with that, I will probably show you how to go about locating and treating these canals that come by as well. So this was another case that was referred to me by a fantastic restorative dentist. I would probably say he's one of the best in the business. So he is so good in his work. At the end of the shaping procedure, he knew he's missed a canal. So he marked this out specifically and told me, you're going to have this sorted out for me. So in this case, this was the picture clinically when I opened up the tooth. So what I've done here in this case is I have gone ahead with my shaping. I put all my files inside, and I just checked if I have got lucky enough to see if I managed to get my file into that extra canal as well. But then I've missed it completely here myself. So what I've done, or what I had to do in this case was, what I'm using here is a slow speed and long shank moon spur, which is an absolute essential for any endodontist. I'm de-roofing that little dentine there, and then I've used the pre-curved hand file and negotiated that little extra canal. So I had to widen my access a little more. So that's exactly where this extra canal was present. So like, C-shaped canals, you're going to have these canals everywhere. So you need good magnification and good mirror skills to make sure you put those files into those spaces. This is the finished post-operative with that extra canal clearly located as well. And that's the post-operative, and I've just marked this extra canal. So I had to deroof a little more than what I had or what the previous practitioner had to shape these canals. So, and again, another case here. It was referred to me for retreatment. This had a huge periapical lesion and a file in the mesial canal. So in this case, removing the file almost always was never a challenge. I knew it's something I can manage quite comfortably. And also what you need to know is I've blocked out the other orifices to make sure I don't drop the file into those canals. So the file was retrieved.
Now I can hear very faint.
Oh,
Very faint.
I'll try getting a little closer to them. Is this better, madam?
Okay.
Is it better now?
I'll check. I'll check.
Is the audio better now?
Yeah, now I can hear.
Okay, I'm stooping really close to the mic. I'll stick to this place then. So this was a case of a retreatment with a large lesion and a broken file in the mesial canal. So in this case and in this position, removing a broken file never posed a challenge to someone who's been doing it for a while. So we got the file out, and if you can see, I haven't actually shaped the canals anything beyond what the previous practitioner has done. All I'm doing here is spending a lot of time with the irrigants inside. So what I'm trying to show you here is all the canals in this route are interconnected. If you can see the irrigant going in and coming out. There's so much of confluence happening on the inside. So the trick to handling these C-shaped canals is to spend plenty of time with your irrigant on the inside. So this should be your protocol when you irrigate a C-shaped canal. A lot of hypochlorite and probably EDTA towards the end as well. So that's the shape canal here, and that's the post-observation. And 3-year recall shows satisfactory results as of now, but then again, this tooth structurally and periodontally was compromised even when I treated it the first time. So we're going to have to deal with it if and when there's a problem later on. So can you hear me now? Okay, so as far as rework, so what you may have observed is, as far as C-shaped canals are concerned, a lot of these cases have reworks. So it suggests that it's something that has to be exclusively reserved to a specialist in terms of work, one thing. And whenever you get a case for a rework from a general dentist, being an endodontist who's going to treat the tooth, you have to make this clear distinction as to whether you want to retreat the tooth or if you feel an implant may be a more viable option for the patient in the long run. So the problem with this, these are decisions we'll have to make. We run the practice. You can't retreat a tooth and just tell the patient or the dentist that your tooth failed a few years later. So a decision is always made whenever we retreat these Cs as to whether you want to treat it or whether you want to remove the tooth. The little constraint when you treat, when you decide to remove the tooth and replace it with an implant is uh, these fused roots, when they are removed, there's a huge hole over there. So unless you wait sufficiently and then go ahead with your implant therapy, again, you run a high chance of failure. So being an endodontist and being a dentist who gets a lot of referral, we are also in a position where we have to advise the referring dentist and the patient on these lines as well. This is something we really need to do as well. That's when it makes the whole treatment complete. Whether you treat it or not, there has to be very definitive long-term goals from our side when we handle any tooth. So we've briefly discussed the ideology or the rationale behind shaping and irrigating. Now, probably we'll discuss another case which shows on how do we go ahead and fill these spaces? This was another case again referred for a retreatment. And if you can see, you can very clearly visualize the amount of webs and pins that are present on the inside. And one other thing I do as far as C-shape canals is, though I might complete my shaping procedure, I never obturate them in the same appointment. I always like to have an extra waiting time with calcium hydroxide on the inside, just to be absolutely sure that this tooth is asymptomatic. So as far as these are concerned, you never know how much you're missing. Like I already mentioned, the goal is to miss as less as possible from the beginning itself. So again, this is my working length radiograph, and that's the post-operative radiograph. And here, every little bit of the tooth is filled, including the pins and webs and whatnot, everything else too. So how I go about obturating the C-shaped canals I come across in most of the cases, this technique called the rapid flow obturation. We will not be discussing this technique in detail, but there's a fantastic article that's available online on how to do it. To put it all in a nutshell, it's simple. Just prepare the canals the usual way. Take a hand plugger, pre-fit it to make sure that it goes 2 to 3 mm of the working length of the prepared space. A drop of sealer is coated. We don't want to add too much of sealer because this one technique generally splurges the obturation material around all over into extra anatomy as well. So we just want just the enough amount of sealer. And then you use a gun used for thermoplastic obturation, put it at the highest temperature setting, 200, and then you carefully condense. So this is again a video on how I would do it. I have a tooth here with the sealer coated well. Not too much sealer, just about enough. It's carefully painted on the tooth. The next thing I would do is take the thermoplastic gun with a high temperature setting, place it carefully inside the orifice, and syringe the obturation material out. It's also called the squirt technique. It's called the rapid flow technique or the squirt technique. This is what I believe is sure shot to fill most of these spaces. Next, what I'm doing is I'm introducing the pre-fit plugger into the space and very carefully condensing the obturation material. Here, the concern for me is the thickness of the root that is available in different places. Too much of condensation pressure is not a great idea when you're dealing with thin anatomy. So gently compact it. And most of the times you take the plugger 2 to 3 millimeters of the length. And the commonest phobia practitioners have is, what if we push the GP outside? But if you've been doing this technique long enough, you will have a certain level of confidence to be absolutely sure you're well within the root canal space. You'll kind of evolve to learn how to keep it within the space. Now with the gun again into the accessory or the extra canals that are present there. And a similar condensation with the plugger. So once you condense the apical third, you can either choose to take a radiograph at this point before you backfill it, or if you're confident about your obturation, you can go ahead and backfill it in one go as well. Depends on the case. Let's say the case has a lot of resorption, I would be a little more careful about doing it all in one go. So this is an unedited video, so it's taking some time. So again, if you look at it, the technique followed here is pretty fast. So I barely spend a couple of minutes to get a good seal inside the root canal. There's one little root canal space here that has to be filled, and a similar thing here. So when you squirt the GP down like this and condense, you're also pushing it into the accessory spaces. So what you get here is a very good fill. You get a good three-dimensional fill, or this is probably what will take you closest to a three-dimensional fill in case that's what you're looking for. There are other techniques. You can use warm vertical compaction as well, but then this is my technique of choice in terms of C-shaped canals or any irregular wide canal space. So just carefully compacting it. And that's about. So we pretty much come to the end of the lecture. And so if you want me to sum up everything that I would look at, or I would want someone who's going to treat a C-shaped nurse, someone who's going to treat a someone who treats a C-shaped canal to look at, I would call it responsible preparation. Not too much, not too less, just about enough to make sure the tooth stays asymptomatic with no periapical pathology at all in the long run. And the next most important thing, I would evaluate a tooth I treat for in terms of a C-shaped anatomy would be the periodontal status. Is the tooth going to be stable enough? Will the tooth offer the patients some amount of life? The next thing is, where do I stand in terms of my skill set? In case I'm a beginner, I would probably, or let's just say I'm a general practitioner who's not that great with my endo, I would definitely say it is something that has to be handled only by a specialist. Otherwise, it's going to be purely something like Russian roulette technique where you're going to bank purely on luck for the tooth to be fine. On practical outcomes, again, we need to be good with our skill sets. And again, the next thing I would evaluate is when it's a retreatment, especially, would a retreatment work best for the patient, or would an implant therapy be a better option for the patient? So every tooth I can treat. When it comes to me for a retreatment, I don't treat them. So I take this decision on behalf of the patient and the referring dentist as well. So that's pretty much it. And I always very routinely share most of my cases that I do day to day on social media. So in case you might want to see, stay in touch or have a look at these cases, you could probably look into this handle. And I also have a channel running on YouTube. So I would normally share most of my patient work, anything that is interesting on that as well. So in case anybody is interested, you could always look up these portals as well. So that's pretty much it, madam.
Thank you so much, sir, for sharing valuable
much.
experiences. And today's session was clinically oriented, and it was a great learning opportunity for all of us. And I request our chairperson for today to take up the quiz.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, yes, Dr. Bharti, very clear.
Thank you, Dr. Ruben, for a very nice lecture. Now the questions from the audience are, the first question is, recommended obturation technique in C-shaped canals.
I always use what I had shown in the lecture. I prefer the rapid flow obturation technique. I believe that fills spaces a lot more. If that is not an option, you could consider warm vertical compaction as well. And as far as rapid flow obturation technique is concerned, if someone wants to try this technique in particular, I would recommend they start with lower premolars or something and gradually switch to the molars. So it has some level of fear and uncertainty which someone who's just going to start off will have, but then it's something you will get used to. I prefer using the rapid flow technique, but warm vertical compaction would not be a bad idea either. But whatever be the technique you use, too much of condensation pressure to make sure you fill those spaces is a terrible idea, because you have very, very thin spaces inside these C-shaped canals.
The next question is, minimum instrumentation of C-shaped canals till which number and which file to be used?
The material of what we learn and what we are taught, the fact remains that in material of what system or what paper or what tip size you use, you're going to leave a lot of areas untouched when it comes to root canals in particular, and C-shaped canals more than anything else. So I would want to use the word adequate. So let's just say we have a tooth with a little resorption, you might want to go a little larger. So I am actually not in a position to give you a number. If I gave you a number, I would be extremely inaccurate and I would be misleading you. So adequately prepare it. Let's just say you take a call based on your initial.
The next question is ultrasonics preferred over rotary files in the preparation of root canal?
purely ultrasonics is not going to work. And ultrasonics is an adjunct to the rotary preparation. Once you're done with your rotary preparation, definitely some amount of ultrasonics is going to help remove off that little extra tissue, probably even to just scratch off that little debris that is stubbornly stuck on those pins. When you look at it through a microscope, you see virtually everything. So to remove all that, ultrasonics are going to be handy. But again, don't contact the walls too much. You don't want to break a file in there and land in trouble, further trouble. So.
Okay. The next question is, how can we clinically evaluate and plan the taper and apical preparation size in managing a C-shaped canal?
Like I said earlier, it is something which is going to be a spot decision. So I would want you to decide on that based on your first instrument. Let's say you have a 30 size flying in and out comfortably inside. Maybe I would want to prepare a lot more. But one thing I can assure you, tapers is not the solution for C-shaped canals. You're going to do a lot of damage, thank God. You're going to go for wider tapers when you treat these C-shaped canals. And this is my philosophy as far as shaping sizes are concerned. So let's just say I perforate a tooth, strip perforate a tooth, or overly thin a root space. The failure is 100%, near 100%. But then let's just say I missed tissue. I can always work on this tooth when it fails. There's always a second chance. So I would be careful when I shape these canals. I'm not going to use anything too wide. I'm going to be very gentle, careful. I'm going to rely more on my irrigation, probably a week or 10-day wait in between with calcium hydroxide, just to see whether the tooth is symptomatic or asymptomatic and how the patient is responding.
So that is all the questions that we had from the audience. I congratulate you on a very extensive clinical work and the variety of cases that you are treating, including the cases for retreatment. I also appreciate your emphasis on making a decision whether to retreat or go for implants, keeping long-term function in mind and convincing the patient as well as the referral dentists. So a very convincing way of putting it. And thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, madam. Thank you so much.